Well, hello there, Patriots.
How's
Welcome
everybody
back,
doing?
Joel. How are you?
Good, Ben. How are you doing?
I'm good.
Happy New
Uh,
Year to you.
Thank you. Happy New Year to you too, sir.
Everybody else. See who's in the comments.
The Christmas time is a glorious time celebrating the birth of our Savior, Jesus Christ. And as great as it is, it's also exhausting because then
Yeah.
there's expectations with family. There's the new year.
Yeah.
So I don't know about y'all, Patriots.
A little bit of stress, just a little.
Just a little bit. I don't know about y'all Patriots, but at the same token, I love that time, but I'm also very happy.
Hey, when it gets, it is stressful, but then there's always Christmas cookies. So it evens out. And what other time of year can you just eat Christmas candy and cookies and just do it and realize I'm going to do this for 3 weeks and then I'll deal with the consequences later.
Yeah, I had so much food. Oh my gosh. It was all good food, don't get me wrong, but
Really? Oh, good for you. Mine wasn't all good. Tasty, good and tasty and good tasty, but not good for me. No.
Oh, well, healthy good. Absolutely not.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Yeah.
No. We are still trying to get rid of the leftovers, but there's so much food.
Yeah. Well, everything's big in Texas, so you got some. I'm sure you got big barbecue ribs and lots of cornbread and whatever else. Southern food, right?
Actually, so my family is very interesting. So the bulk of the food came from my wife's side, which is a mixture of Mexican food and Cajun cuisine.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So her mom's Mexican and her dad's pure French Cajun. And so, yeah, awesome combination. But again,
not bad.
So many beans. Oh my gosh, we had so much beans. We're still recovering from all the beans we had.
That's a hard recovery too.
Yeah. All right, sir. So, you ready to get started?
I am.
Fantastic. So, if all of y'all have been paying attention, recently there have been a few states that have chosen to straight up ignore actual law. Colorado, for example, their court system decided, you know what? We're going to decide to take Trump off the ballot. Just completely ignore due process. By the way, all the trials that Trump is involved in, none of them have been closed. None of them. There have been no rulings. He has not been indicted for any crime. He has not been found guilty of any crime.
I don't think he's even been indicted of insurrection.
That's a key factor.
Yeah.
Right?
They haven't even indicted him.
So here you have a state, Colorado, where their Supreme Court made that decision to just remove him. Now, granted, it is in the appeal process, and it's not going to get past the Supreme Court, obviously. But that raised a lot of questions. That raised a lot of issues. Clearly, you had people on the left celebrating this. It's like, yay, hooray, they are protecting democracy. Right? They are protecting us from this evil orange man. The people on the right are saying, wait a second. Hold on. You can't just do that. You can't just have a group of people or one person make the decision to remove someone off the ballot. We're not living in the Soviet Union. You can't just do that.
Yet. Yeah.
We say yet, right? Because guess what? Another state, Maine, the Attorney General, right, of Maine, I forgot her name. She made the decision to do the exact same thing, to remove Trump off the ballot. Now, let's just pause this for a second, okay? I want to get your thoughts, Joel, before we continue, because this is a pretty radical thing that's happened recently. What are your thoughts?
Well, if you want to say that, yes, but I mean, there have been radical things happening really all my life.
Yeah. True.
I'm a slightly older man than you, but yeah, this all happened you used to say that the left was chipping away at the foundation of the country.
Mhm.
About 10, 15 years ago, they full on started taking sledgehammers to all the bearing walls. It's so many radical things have happened, especially in the last 4 or 5 years, that really maybe in the last 7 years since when Trump first got elected.
Mhm.
That's when the lid kind of came off of the left and they started really being radical. But they were radical before, but the lid wasn't off. So yes, it is radical. But now so many of our institutions, almost all of our institutions now, have been taken over by the left. So we have an institutionally leftist country right now. So it's not surprising to me that these kind of things are happening, because that's what I've been seeing coming, looking back on it my whole life. So
Dr. Steve Turley, one of the channels I follow on YouTube, he made a video about the Colorado decision, and he made a great point. He was citing the judge's reasoning as to why they did this, and they were basically using the Constitution to justify the decision, stating that the former President Trump did in fact incite this insurrection, which then makes him invalid to be on the ballot. The problem with all that Turley made was that, number one, Trump was still president when all that went down. Number two, he has not been found guilty in any court of law for anything remotely involving this. So the issue here is you have a Supreme Court of a state just blatantly making this decision and impacting someone's political future, all because they feel, that's the key word, they feel that he's a danger.
Right. And it's not just Donald Trump's political future, it's the country's political future, obviously.
Oh, of course.
I mean, they're denying us. Even our beloved governor out here said, this is wrong. Trump should be defeated at the ballot box, not in the courtroom, which is a very conservative thing for our governor to say, and a very hypocritical thing for our governor to say, based on some of the
Right.
things that he's put forward here. But he's right on that one point.
Yeah, it's pretty bad when the governor of California actually makes a valid argument.
Yeah. Not only is he far left, he's not the brightest bulb in the box, but
Right.
he's smart enough to see this. Lots of left-leaning and Democratic people are saying, this is wrong. It just smacks of, you think, first of all, you hate him. And second of all, you think he's going to win. So you're doing everything you can to take him off. But it's the states, most of the states that are taking him off are not states he's expected to win anyways. So I don't know.
Well, you know what's funny about that statement? That's what everyone said in 2016.
Yes.
That's what everyone thought in 2020.
Right.
The whole concept that we've relied on for decades is gone. Everything that we know when it comes to polling, when it comes to stats, when it comes to everything that we are used to when it comes to voting is gone. We are in uncharted territory now. And on one hand,
It's true.
It's terrifying. But on the other, it's also very exhilarating, because that means that more and more people on the local level, at the grassroots level, are waking up and saying, hey, this is not right. This is not how it's supposed to be done. Straight up, it's not constitutional. And that's what it boils down to.
Yes.
Now, going back for a moment, okay? Those judges, not all, but most of them agreed. We feel he's a danger. The Attorney General for Maine made her case plainly known. She feels that Trump is a danger. Meanwhile, you have guys like the lieutenant governor of Texas coming out and saying, hey, wait a second. If those states are allowed to do that, then you know what? We are going to remove the demented potato in chief from our ballot. Now, of course, there's a massive uproar to that, but Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick of Texas made it very clear, wait a second, if you're saying that the former president violated the Constitution, then there's more than enough evidence proving that our current potato in chief refuses to enforce his duty, which is to protect the border.
Yeah.
That has not happened. So, you know what? Fine. We'll take him off the ballot. Now, that can be viewed as chaotic. Every state doing their own thing. But it also can be viewed as real liberty, where every state seizes their keyword sovereignty, where they utilize the 9th and 10th Amendment to the Bill of Rights, to the Constitution, and every state makes their own destiny. So your thoughts, what are your thoughts on the whole idea of state sovereignty? Every state doing their own thing.
I seem to have heard that concept somewhere before. It might have been the idea right from the start. So it's certainly not a new idea. Mm-hmm. Since the Civil War, though, it hasn't really been a reality. So, you know, as a historian, you probably know all those arguments, right? Or all those viewpoints. But, you know, are we the United States or are we these United States? I don't know if you ever heard that dichotomy. So, yeah, I think it's always to me been an interesting argument and an interesting issue. You know, counter juxtaposed. We want to be a nation of laws, you know, and we want to be a unified nation. But at what cost to our, like I said, and the issue is our individual liberties. What cost to our individual liberties? And that's been the tension all along. It goes back to Jefferson and Adams and Madison and all those guys, right?
There you go. Right, exactly.
Yeah. So, yeah, I tend to fall on the liberty side of things. I think the federal government has become so corrupt and so bloated and so big. A lot of people think it's just going to naturally collapse in on itself. And when that happens, the states are going to have to figure out where they're going to have to figure out their own sovereignty and what they're going to do.
Right.
So
after the American Revolution, people forget that it wasn't all hunky-dory.
Oh, no.
Founding fathers spent the next multiple years trying to figure out, okay, we're free, independent, now what? Well, we got to make this government, we got to make this constitutional republic actually work. But as you mentioned before, the problem became, okay, well, who has the power? Should it be within a single centralized, powerful government, the federal government? Or should the power reside with the states and let the states do their own thing?
Right.
Hence the anti-federalists, which was pro-state government, and the federalists, which was pro-federal government. In the end, guys like Jefferson and Hamilton, who hated each other's guts for the longest time, they came to a compromise. And the compromise was the anti-federalists told the federalists, listen, we will let y'all be in charge on one condition. We have to have a document that clearly states the rights, the God-given rights that cannot be taken away. Hence, the Bill of Rights. We have to have something saying that no matter how big, no matter how corrupt the federal government gets, the American citizens in every state will have the same rights.
Yeah.
Freedom of speech.
Right.
Bear arms. Okay.
It seems to me, didn't somebody, I don't know if it was Hamilton, argued that, well, we don't need that. It's in there already. Right. but
Right.
it's like
Hamilton
none of,
argued that they're implied.
yeah, no,
Right.
you need it in
Was like,
writing.
no, it has to
Yeah.
be clearly stated.
Yeah.
Right.
Jefferson was no dummy,
No.
but nor neither was Hamilton, but none of them were really, but they hashed this all out. And, Adams and Jefferson didn't speak to each other for 20 years, but then, just over it. And, but that just shows you though, how the idea of America was so unique, because the worst thing that happened is a bunch of politicians didn't speak to each other.
Yeah.
Well, after other civil wars, heads were lopped off.
Right. Yeah. This wasn't
bloodbath.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's the difference between the French Revolution and the American Revolution? It was the
Less
guillotine,
bloody.
right?
Yeah. Straight up, less bloody.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, that's kind of in our DNA. But I remember last time we were together, at the end, you said, "Hey, that good thing is that Constitution's in there, and it's never going to go away." And if you remember what I said, I said, "From your lips to God's ear, brother," because I sure hope not. But there are people, and there are people in power that would like to see that Constitution go away.
Oh, of course.
If they manage to use this issue to re-stack the Supreme Court, it's a very good chance that some, if not all, of the Constitution will eventually go away. So that's how important this election is.
And you know what? Ultimately, the question still stands. When it comes to the word sovereignty,
we still haven't figured it out, have we?
Who do you report to as your sovereign top power? At the end of the day, it's not the president. It's to our creator, it's to God. He is our sovereign power. His son Christ is my king. At the end of the day, we have sovereignty over our choices. We can choose. Do we follow the powers that be, or do we follow Christ? Do we just bow down and submit to whatever happens, or do we bow down and submit to Christ? Do we choose a life of reckless endangerment, or do we stop, realize our own choices, and still choose Christ? Because ultimately, at the end of the day, no matter who controls this country, no matter what happens to the Constitution, regardless of whether there's more power to the federal government or a state government, regardless of all of that, you, me, every single patriot watching this has to understand you still have your sovereignty. You still have the freedom to choose. Now, obviously, I would hope that we all choose Christ. I would hope that we all choose to follow him as our shepherd, as our king. But not everyone chooses that. There's a movie called Kingdom of Heaven. Came out a long time ago. I want to say early 2000s. And it's about the Crusades. I won't give a whole long summary, but basically there's a scene where the historical character, King Baldwin, known as the Leper King, he ruled Jerusalem. He's talking to the main character, Balian. I don't know if Balian was a real person. The point is, there is this small scene where King Baldwin is basically telling the main character, hey, listen, you may be lost, you may be confused on what your purpose is here in Jerusalem. But no matter what you do, at the end of the day, when you die, who do you stand before? You stand before God. And you cannot make the excuse before God, oh, well, I didn't know. Well, others told me to do this horrible thing. Oh, God, I didn't know the truth. That won't suffice. You will be judged one day. And ultimately, it's your decisions. It's your choices. It's your sovereign choices. Do you choose Christ or not? So, Patriots, take that as a little grain of peace in these trying times. No matter what happens, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It does. to our pathetic earthly minds. But at the end of the day, who's in charge? Who has complete and total control? That's the thing we all need to go back to every single day. So,
And it isn't, you're right, it isn't every single day thing. Over the past 3 or 4 years, though, we've seen that idea come under serious challenge.
mhm, absolutely.
Within the body of Christ. The issue of, do we forsake meeting together as some are in the habit? That was a big issue 2, 3 years ago, right?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
I was part of a church that said, no, we're not going to meet together
Mhm.
because of what the thought of the day was, or the fear, it was really fear
Mhm.
of the day was, and what they were pressured to do by the government. So we found a church we had to find a church that was meeting together in obedience to God. So whenever these things come up, it's a God and Caesar thing. And
Right.
when the Pharisees showed Jesus that coin and said, or no, they said, who do we pay taxes to Caesar? That really wasn't a tax question. People get that wrong.
Yeah.
That was an attempt to trick Jesus, and Jesus wasn't going for it.
Mhm.
He's just like, okay, show me the coin. Got Caesar's. Okay, give Caesar what is Caesar's, but give to God what is God's. And that's the part that everybody leaves off.
And that part is always above.
Yes. And it's always Caesar's nature to take what is God's.
Of course.
That's the thing. That's why he said it. Caesar thinks he's God. He wants to take my thing. No, you just give Caesar what Caesar is due.
Mhm.
But so the question was to trick him into saying something about taxes. It's not about taxes. It's about who is your ultimate authority, like you've been saying. Who is sovereign in your life? Is God sovereign or Caesar sovereign?
Right.
Well, in the past 3 or 4 years, a lot of us Christians have shown Caesar, hey, you're sovereign, God's not. If you just scare us enough, you just intimidate us enough, we'll close ourselves down. We'll do whatever you want. And it's continued now into popular culture. Popular culture has taken up on that. If you don't support this specific victim group or this specific social cause,
then you're the enemy.
Then you're the enemy. And So, and a lot of Christians are falling away, really, whether it's deconstructing their faith or just going along with whatever the flavor of the day is, and forgetting that God is sovereign in order to be popular or to be safe. So.
Right. Well, right there. Even worse, justifying evil to fit in your flavor of Christianity.
There you go. Yes, you're right.
Follow what the Pope's doing and say, oh, well, the Pope said it's okay for these things to happen, so it must be okay. But people forget, wait a second, he's a human being. Wait a second. Scripture clearly says these things are the way it needs to be done.
Right.
You're just completely ignoring all that in favor of being comfortable. I get it. I understand. Going against the grain, not hopping on the bandwagon is hard. It's painful. It can cause a lot of hurt. I get it. But at the end of the day, did Christ sacrifice himself for just funsies? No.
Yeah.
Did he conquer death just because it was the popular thing to do? No. He conquered death to show the world, I am the way. I am the only way. Muhammad, Buddha, L. Ron Hubbard, Joseph Smith, all those guys, they never conquered death. So ultimately, who's in charge? So, anyways,
that's right.
Time flies by all the time, Joel, which is a great thing. Before we dip out, let's bring it all back together. The topic of sovereignty. How would you close this session out with regards to that word?
Sovereignty. It's interesting because when all these issues come up, and the further our culture and things get away from what we would call a Christian worldview, Judeo-Christian worldview.
Mhm.
The more you're reminded, hey, don't be upset. Don't worry about it. God is sovereign. Don't worry. Whatever happens, God is sovereign. And I was thinking, yes, I know. And I do try and keep that. But that doesn't mean I'm automatically going to make the right decision I want to make sure, because I know God's sovereign,
Right.
that I'm doing what he wants me to do. Because there's a lot of people
Right.
that say, oh, I know God is sovereign, but well, then why are you going along with this?
Yeah.
It seems like you have just you're saying that God is sovereign, and yet you're bending to the stuff that is not right, and that God would not have you do.
Mhm.
So I'm not worried about God. I'm worried about you. I'm worried about me. Am I
Right.
going to be found faithful through this trial? And that's where you have to keep in mind that God is sovereign. And you have a choice. It's like you've been saying. You have a sovereign will. He's given you, in a sense, sovereignty over your standing with him.
Mhm.
He will pursue you, but you have to respond to his call. And if you
Right.
don't, and you have to daily, like you said, die to yourself, die to your popularity, die to your safety, die to your comfort, maybe, and follow him. That's what he calls us to do. So he is sovereign. He's going to be sovereign, whether we think he is or not. We have a choice on whether we are going to stay faithful to that sovereignty and to that lordship in our lives and lordship in our world. And will we be found faithful?
Right. Absolutely. When you're looking at this from the political point of view, you have this awesome thing that makes our country unique, and that's called state sovereignty.
Right.
Very few countries in the world allow that to even happen. The ninth and 10th Amendment in our Constitution, which is part of the Bill of Rights, makes it very clear the states do have sovereignty over how they do things. That was the deal between the Federalists and Anti-Federalists. Okay. The issue becomes when the federal government refuses to do their job, and it falls on the states. Okay, but what happens when your state doesn't do its job? What's next? Well, then obviously you have the counties, you have the cities, but ultimately, who is ultimately in charge of you? You.
You.
Who's ultimately in charge of making decisions? You, the one individual.
And
And
it
then,
was right. It was a system designed by people with a strong Judeo-Christian worldview that could see why the idea of monarchies, things like that, that God was not God's way.
yeah, and then ironically, it was monarchies that felt like they were chosen by God.
Right.
Right?
Well, that goes
That's
all
the
the way
irony of
back to
all of it.
Israel saying, "Give us a king." Give us a king. No.
Right, right.
Well, give us okay. You can have your king, but that's not what I want. So.
And so when it boils all down to you, the individual, living in these crazy times, you ask yourself, what do I do? How do I make sense of this? How do I endure these times? You endure it by following Christ, by acknowledging yourself as a sovereign person, as a person who has freedom of choice, and choosing the hard path of Christ.
Yes.
Not easy. It's hard. It's meant to be hard.
It's narrow too.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's all we got, Patriots. That's our topic. It was pretty intense, but we got through it. As always, I love talking to y'all. Joel, what are your closing words?
All my closing words are again, thanks everyone for listening. And this message is gets more timely every day. As things, remember, God is in control, and make sure you're on his winning team.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's what I would say.
Patriots, this is Constitution Vet. Wonderful day. Look talking to you, Joel. Have a wonderful day, Patriots. Next week, I will see you guys again. I'm not sure what we'll talk about, but we'll work it out then.
We'll be here.
Absolutely.
All right.
Later, guys.
Thanks.